Okay, shalom. Right. And a river flowed out of Eden. Some very, very fascinating teaching this lesson. We're going to be... I'm going to introduce the lesson by looking at quite a complex text from Zohar. I will, however, break it down in the lesson and simplify it so that you are aware of what I'm talking about. Okay, it is highly complicated if you're not used to Kabbalistic language, and even so, the Zohar is written in a unique language that needs to be decoded anyway. So I'm just using it so that when we come to do this particular analysis, you can understand some of the terms where it's come from. Okay, and you can sort of see where we're going, and everything that's written in here to me is pointed out in the Torah itself, through an alphanumerical analysis. So let's just read this from the Zohar. You can access the Zohar, the entire Zohar, online. Okay, on Zohar.org, I think it is. So this is from Bereshit, the first book of the Zohar, verse 256 or paragraph 256. And it says this: do not be too worried when when I'm reading through this and you think I don't know any of that. I will explain it. I'm just putting this up because if you're like me, I like to read the source of everything. I don't just like people to speak. I like absolutely everything that they're saying to be sourced in some way. So to know where they're getting the information from. They're not just talking. So that's reason why I've done it. I can appreciate for some people this is a little bit overfacing. I'm going to greatly simplify this during the teaching. So another explanation of the verse, and a river went out of Eden, Bereshit 2:10, is that there are no strange clipot in the life of tree above. Clipot are the evil shells that dominate during exile, the evil outer dark husks that dominate in Israel in exile. So for example, the Erev Rav, I talk about this all the time, dominates Judaism at this time. Edomite clipper dominates Christianity at this time. Yishmaelite clipper dominates Islam at this time. They're the three heads of the clipper during this exile, which is called the Edomite exile that we are in now. Okay, so there are no strange clipper in the tree of life above, namely Zer and Pin of Atziluth. This is the name YHWH. That's basically what that is. At the highest level possible, the highest world possible, which is pure godliness, the realm of what's called Atzilut, the world of emanation. Okay, as it is written, nor shall evil dwell with you. That's from Tehillim, Psalm 5:5. Why? Because the clipot first appear in the world of Bria. So there's a world called Bria, which is the world associated with creation. Below the world of Atziluth, but the tree below in the world of Bria does indeed have strange clipots, so they're the evil outer husks. This tree is planted in the Garden of Eden of the lower Zer and Pin. So there's an upper Garden of Eden. Okay, the upper Garden of Eden in the realm of Atziluth is just pure godliness. There is no evil in it, but we're talking about a lower Garden of Eden. Okay, Garden of Eden of the lower Zer and Pin, namely Zer and Pin of Bria, and there is a tree, and this tree is called Enoch or Metatron, because in the upper Garden of Eden of the Holy One, blessed be He, namely in the Garden of Eden of Atziluth, the world of emanation, there are no devious or stubborn clipot. For this reason it is written, and a river went out of Eden, the river Metatron went out of Eden. So we've got this is what I want to point out specifically. Metatron is linked to this particular tree, which is the tree of the knowledge of good and evil, by the way, and this river. So Metatronic consciousness is definitely not as high a revelation as the pure godliness that we can receive directly from the name YHWH himself. Okay, so we've got to make that distinction. There's an upper Garden of Eden that is connected exclusively to the absolute holiness of the name YHWH, and there's no evil and no awareness evil when you are attached to that level of consciousness from the realm of Atzilut, where you are receiving an emanation from that realm. There is absolutely no evil. You are not governed by evil. You are not perceiving evil. All you can perceive is the name YHWH, nothing else beside him. So a lower level of consciousness, this is Metatronic consciousness, okay, where there's good and evil. And I spoke about Metatronic consciousness a lot. He's the slave who rules instead of the king. Okay, so if you haven't attained consciousness of the king over kings of kings himself, YHWH, the likelihood is that you will be conscious of Metatron, believing you are serving the king, and in fact not. Just wait a minute, we'll get to that. I haven't quite finished, have I? So, the river Metatron went out of Eden, meaning that it left its pleasures, Hebrew Eden, so Eden means pleasures, which consisted of the mochin of Ema. These are your mentalities, your intellectual mentalities, as being it is called Eden, and to water the garden means his garden, i.e. the garden of Metatron, in the lower garden of Eden, where there is the presence of evil and clipon. You are actually be able to be conscious of evil, okay, because you're not attached to the tree of life. You're attached to the tree of the knowledge of good and evil, which is Metatron. It is his orchard, namely Malkut of the world of Bria, into which Ben Azai, Ben Zoma and Elisha entered. So this is a story of 4 that entered into what was called the orchard, the heavenly orchard. Okay, 3 of them perished. 1 became an apostate, 1 died, 1 went mental. Okay, 4 of them entered in total. Only Rabbi Akiva entered and left in peace. Why? Because he actually entered the upper garden and they entered the garden of Metatron. Okay, so it's a big clear warning to us that this level of consciousness, is not going to help us to progress in the ways that we would have hoped to have progressed. These were very, very holy men, but there's a problem when you attach to this level of consciousness, okay, and believe that that's the real deal. There's problems with that. When people actually think this is the slave who rules instead of the king, who rules, and most people are in Metatronic consciousness, so they are actually serving Metatron, thinking that they're serving the king, and they're not. Okay, and you take that to the very, 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 very end, and you're going to be you're going to have problems, because it's simply not the truth. It's simply not the truth. It's not the highest level of consciousness at all, and all you're doing is becoming the deeper and deeper you go into that realm, the more you're going to be conscious of the tree of the knowledge of good and evil, which what do you do when you eat from that? It results in death, and things like that. So we need to really know that we need to be able to distinguish between the king who rules Metatron, the slave who rules Metatron, and the king over kings of kings, YHWH, in the tree of life. Metatron's clipper are good from one side and evil from another. This is why the Torah lists the permissible and prohibited, kosher and unfit, pure and impure. So this is why most religions at that time say, we are good because our religion tells us we are the most supreme people in the whole world at this time, because all the promises have come to us, etc., etc. And all those people over there are bad. And if we do this, we can be in part of our group. We'll be on the good side of our group. And the people who call themselves like Christians but don't do what we do, they're on the bad side. There's always this judgment. There's always good and there's always bad, and there's always conflict, and there's always wars, and there's always bloodshed as a result of this judgment that comes from deciding this thing here is good and this thing here is bad. Okay, so there's a lot of judgment within each of these major religions, and as a consequence there's been a lot of separation, hatred towards people that are not classed as like them, and then this results in death and bloodshed. It's as simple as that, but it can be at all different kinds of levels. It can be like, oh, we're not going to pray in the same minyan as them because they don't put their shoe on the right way around, or it literally can be broken down and broken down and broken down, and it can just be, oh, Protestants and Catholics, they can murder one another because they don't agree, and the Shias and the Shiites or whatever, they can murder each other because they want to. It goes on and on, all this sectarian stuff. It's not just for clashes between one religion and another. It can be sectarian clashes within the actual religion itself. Okay, basically it's a lot of do's and don'ts. You're a slave. You're a slave to a slave. A slave only knows how to tell you what to do and don't do. He doesn't know. It's not messianic consciousness. It's not like you're at the level of the children of the king. You're literally a slave serving another slave. So it's what do we do to get out of that mentality? What can we learn? What has the Torah indicated to us to help us break that influence that can be a very, very powerful stronghold in your life? It can be very difficult to understand how that might impact us, and it can be very difficult for us to let go, because we have been so heavily influenced by exilic mindsets. We need to be a Hebrew in order to get from this side of the river to the other side of the river. So bearing in mind, based on that Zohar, Metatron is the river that flows out of Eden. Okay? Let me just go and have a look at, let's just get some context to that. Oh no, read this first and then we'll just go back and have some context to that river that flowed out of Eden. Right, Hebrew, from the other side of the river, the ones who crossed over. The most generally accepted hypothesis today is that the text intends Ivri, which is Hebrew. Ivri here is Hebrew, as the adjective. Hebrew suffix I, which in Hebrew it would be a yud, formed from the word ever. So ever means beyond or across, or avar, to cross or to transverse. It is a description of migrants from across the river, bearing in mind that Metatron is called the river that flowed from Edom. As the Bible describes the Hebrews, the description of peoples and nations from their location from across the river is often the river Euphrates, sometimes the river Jordan, was common in this region of the ancient Near East. It appears as Ebenari in Akkadian and Avar Nahara in Aramaic, both corresponding to the Hebrew Evan Nahar, which means from across the river. The Aramaic expressions use being quoted verbatim in the Bible, for example in an Aramaic letter sent to the king of Persia in the book of Ezra or in the book of Nehemiah, sometimes rendered as trans-Euphrates, and we're going to be having a look at this. Both these terms from Ezra, because this can teach us a lot about what it is to be a Hebrew on the other side of the river, and it's a wonderful example given to us in the book of Ezra, this whole concept of breaking that slave mentality and that breaking away from that service to the slave who rules as a king, Metatron or Enoch as it's called. Let's just go and have a look at the river that flowed out of Eden in context. So this is chapter 2 of Bereshit, okay? And starting here, this is the first time that the name YHWH is used in the entire Torah. And I was just reading a book by Rav Ginsburg actually that mentioned that you've got a total of 7 really major important instances. The first 7 appearances of Lord God are very, very significant. Okay, there's a lot of wonderful teaching that can be gleaned from that. But those 7 first instances are split up by the description of the river that flowed from Eden. And as we can see this, it says, these are the generations of the heavens and the earth when they were created on the day that the Lord God made heaven and earth. So that's the first time YHWH is used in the entire Torah. Now no tree of the field was yet on the earth, neither did any herb of the field yet grow, because YHWH Elohim had not brought rain upon the earth, and there was no man to work the soil. So that's the second time. And the meats descended from the earth and watered the entire surface of the ground. And the Lord God formed man from dust from the ground, and he breathed into his nostrils the soul of life, and man became a living soul. All that is highly messianic, by the way. And chaya, a living soul, la nefesh chaya, that chaya is the soul level of Moshiach ben David. And all that gematria of that, a man became a living soul, it's all related to a revelation of who Moshiach is. And the Lord God, that's the fourth time then, planted a garden in Eden from the east, and he placed there the man whom he had formed. And the Lord God caused to sprout from the ground every tree pleasant to see and good to eat, and the tree of life in the midst of the garden, and the tree of knowledge of good and evil. Okay, so that's the fifth time YHWH Elohim. This is the times when, and we're counting now where YHWH Elohim is used, and the first 7 times that is used. Let me make myself clear about that. So we can see that we've got the description of the tree of life, which is the name YHWH, and the tree of the knowledge of good and evil is very much connected to revelation of Metatron. And then we've got it broken up by a description of the river that flowed out of Eden, which is what we're talking about now. And the river flowed out of Eden to water the garden, and from there it separated and became 4 heads. Okay, so my understanding of that is the 4 heads of the clipper that we suffer now. You know, the Ishmaelite clipper, the Edomite clipper, and the Erev clipper. And perhaps the other one was from the past exile in Egypt, you know, the clipper of Pharaoh, the pharaonic clipper. I'm not 100% sure, but that's certainly a personal inspiration I've got, because the clipper are called for 3 heads of the clipper in this particular exile, but we know from the past children of Israel have faced the clipper of Pharaoh. And then you've got a description. The name of one is Pishon. That is the one that encompasses all the land of Havilah, where there is gold, and the gold of that land is good. There is the crystal and the onyx stone. And the name of the second is Gihon. That is the one that encompasses all the land of Cush. The name of the third river is Tigris. That is the one that flows to the east of Syria. And the 4th river is that of the Euphrates. Now the Lord God, so that would be the 6th one, took the man and he placed him in the garden of Eden to work it and to guard it. And the Lord God commanded man, saying, of every tree of the garden you may eat freely, but the tree of the knowledge of good and evil you shall not eat of it, for on the day that you eat thereof you shall surely die. So here you can see those 7 instances of YHWH Elohim, the first 7 instances in the Torah of YHWH Elohim, and you can see how they're broken up by this whole story of the river that flowed out of Eden that we're told in the Zohar is Metatron. Okay, and they were talking about a lower Eden now. Just to point out, however, just to make this note, it's very interesting, until the river comes out of Eden, if you can see there, and the Lord God caused to sprout from the ground every tree pleasant to see and good to eat, and the tree of life in the midst of the garden, and the tree of the knowledge of good and evil. At no point we're told it's every tree pleasant and to see and good to eat, and together it's mentioned the tree of life and the tree of the knowledge of good and evil. And it's not until the river that is Metatron comes out, then we have the commandment, don't we? We have the do's and the don'ts then. From that point on, after the river comes out of Eden, then we get the command. And suddenly this tree that prior to that river is good to eat. There's no commandment whatsoever, is there? It says very clearly, and the Lord God caused to sprout from the ground every tree pleasant to see and good to eat, and the tree of life in the midst of the garden, and the tree of the knowledge of good and evil. No command whatsoever in a verse which says good to see and good to eat. Okay, but then just after the river comes out, then you get the command. And the Lord God commanded man, saying, of every tree of the garden you may freely eat, but of the tree of the knowledge of good and evil you shall not eat of it, for on the day you eat thereof you shall surely die. So I hope you can understand when we're saying we want to get back to our status in the Garden of Eden, you know, maybe we've got to get back beyond that river, and we will have a look. You know, we got to get really back to this place, haven't we? We want to be here prior to the river flowing out of the garden, and we want to be here prior to the command. We want to be, you know, we want to be at that place where we were before we fell. So it's just worth bearing in mind. And like I say, I read this book on Shabbat. Rav Ginsburg pointed out these 7 it's not me that noticed it. I actually read a book about it, but it just so happened that it was about things that was of great interest to me because of all that I'd been studying with Metatron and all that I'd been studying recently about the whole concept of the Hebrews and things like that. So that's why I came up to that. Right, let's go back. Right, we're now going to go and analyse some of these written in the book of Ezra. Very interesting stuff. I will point out, because I just double checked, that instance in Genesis 2:4, which I said was the first appearance of YHWH in the entire Torah. It is correct. It is the first appearance. But the analysis that I got from the book of Rav Ginsburg called 913 The Secret Wisdom of Genesis, he talked about the 7 appearances, the 7 first appearances of YHWH Elohim. Okay, so it's all interesting stuff. Lots to learn. Right, so this is very, very fascinating. I'm just going to go to Ezra and give you some context to this verse. But just as it was mentioned a bit about the Hebrew, let's just quickly go back here, look. This means Hebrew, ever nahar, from the opposite side of the river, or from the other side of the river it's translated. So we're going to have a look at this, ever nahar, and Ava Nahara, okay, and that's in the book of Ezra. We'll see anyway, it's very interesting. We're going to analyse this particular verse and another verse where you've got the variation. So you've got it, where is it here, look, Avar Nahara, on the other side of the river. Okay, but I want to go get you some context, because it's all right saying, oh, this is just a verse from Ezra, but the actual context of this is so important when we're trying to understand examples of this mentality, this consciousness that I'm stressing, because we've got to get out of it. We literally have to get out of it. The Metatronic system, the Metatronic mentalities, the exilic mentalities. We want redemption. We've got to know exactly to the degree that we are enslaved. You know, what forces have we got in play, that we're subject to? And it's all warned about in the New Testament. Even it's warned about, you know, and the term Metatron in the New Testament is the prince of the world. You know, even in Jewish, even in the Jewish scriptures, he's called the prince of the world. So he's the one that governs instead of YHWH, and he's the one that can act as an angel of light, or is got a backside to him called Sambatyon, like Satan himself. Okay, and so this is where the idea of evil comes in. Right, so let's go get some context on this then, this verse from Ezra, because it's fascinating. It's all really interesting stuff. Okay, so we've got this, and basically the tribes of Yehuda and Benjamin have returned from Babylon, headed up by Ezra and Nehemiah and other great leaders like Zerubbabel, okay, and Yeshua, and they've gone back to Jerusalem to rebuild the temple, and they've had permission from I think it's Darius or Cyrus. So anyway, the people that are obviously around that area are very opposed to this building of the temple. So they're going back to build the temple. They built the walls, and now they're building the temple. So there's people that are there that are very opposed to this. Let's just go and read and get some context. Now the adversaries of Yehuda and Benjamin heard that the people of the exile were building a temple for the Lord God of Israel. They approached Zerubbabel and the heads of the fathers' houses and said to them, "Let us build with you, for like you we seek your God, and we have been sacrificing to him since the days of I'm going to pronounce that in Hebrew. Esar Hadon, the king of Assyria, who brought us up here. And Zerubbabel, Yeshua, and the rest of the heads of the fathers' houses of Israel said to them, it is not for you and for us to build a house for our God, but we ourselves shall build for the Lord God of Israel, as King Cyrus, the king of Persia, commanded us. So they had this commandment to actually build it from King Cyrus. Okay. Right, so they were confronted, and note there Yeshua, and it's very significant. Zerubbabel, Yeshua was in the list of all them coming out of Babylon. Yeshua was second after Zerubbabel in the list. When they listed who's coming out of Babylon, it was Yeshua was second, I do believe. I've done teachings on that before. Right, so basically then what they decide to do is and all the people of the land were hindering the people of Judea and frightening them from building, and they would hire advisers against them to frustrate their plan all the days of Cyrus, king of Persia, and until the kingdom of Darius, the king of Persia. Okay, and in the reign of YHWH, in the beginning of his reign, they wrote an accusation against the dwellers of Judea and Jerusalem. So, YHWH, that's what it is in Hebrew, YHWH, he was Esther's husband, and we know what happened in Babylon under YHWH. It was when Haman wanted to murder all the Jews and set the decree, and then he ended up being hung on the gallows instead. Okay, so that's who YHWH is. Okay, they wrote an accusation against the dwellers of Judea and Jerusalem. And the days of, I'm not even going to pronounce these, and the rest of the colleagues wrote with peace to, I will pronounce it in Hebrew because it doesn't really sound like that, it's Artaxerxes, the king of Persia, and the script of the epistle was written in Aramaic and explained in Aramaic. Rahum was the secretary, and Shimshai was the scribe who wrote a letter about Jerusalem to Artaxerxes, the king, as stated. Right, so now they're going to be mourning, and they're mourning about these Jews that wanting to come back and build this temple to their God, etc., etc. And look what they call themselves. It says, and the rest of the nations whom the great and honoured, I'll pronounce it in Hebrew, just wait a minute, Osnaphar, exiled and settled in the cities of Samaria, and the rest of the other side of the river, and Kenaneth. Okay, so they call themselves from the other side of the river. Basically, well, we're going to analyse that. I just want you to get some context. They are calling themselves these Babylonians from the other side of the river. The other side of which river, by the way? Well, the other side of the river that separates Babylon from the land of Israel, which is the Euphrates River. What is one of the heads that the river that flowed out of Eden split into? Yeah, Euphrates. Okay, so there's massive connections, and they're like, we're the people, with all our communities, we're from the other side of the river, we're not from this side of the river, from Israel, where they were presently. They're Babylonians, that's what they're basically saying. So the other side of the river, that was one of the heads that flowed out of Eden. Okay, one of the river that flowed out of Eden that split into 4 heads, and one of them was Euphrates. So I hope you can see the connections and where we might be going with this. This is the reading of the letter that is sent to him. To Artaxerxes, the king, your servants are the people of the other side of the river, and Kenaneth. Again, so they're repeating themselves. Oh, this is the letter now. It's mentioned 14 times, this other side of the river. 13 times they're talking about themselves, and once they're talking about Bnei Israel, or it definitely would appear that way. They're like saying, look, we're on the other side. They're now on the other side. They've now left Babylon, and they've got to the other side of the Euphrates, and they changed the way that it's spelt when they're mentioning Bnei Israel. This is the meaning of the letter they sent to him. Your servants are the people of the other side of the river. To keep mentioning it over and over and over again. Let it be known to the king that the Jews who ascended from you upon us have come to Jerusalem, the rebellious and sinful city. They are building, and the walls they have completed, and the walls they have joined. They're very worried about this. Now let it be known to the king that if this city is built and the walls are founded, they will not give the king's due. The head tax or the meal tax they will not give, and the tax of the kings will suffer. Now, in view of this, that we wish to destroy the temple, and it is improper for us to witness the king's disgrace, we have therefore sent and notified the king that one should search in the annals of your fathers, and you will find in the annals, and you will know that this city is a rebellious city, and it injures kings and countries, and they have made rebellion in its midst since days of yore. Because of this city was destroyed. We made known to the king that if this city is built and its walls founded because of this, you will have no part in the other side of the river. And this is where it changes to Ba'avar Nahara. So it would appear that now they're saying, you know, if you let this be built, you'll have no part in the other side of the river, meaning from the Jews now that are on the other side of the Euphrates, because they've left Babylon, they've left the exile of Babylon, now they've come back to Jerusalem, they're now the ones on the other side of the river. They're Hebrews. They made it across this river that is Metatron, this whole slave mentality, and decided, no, we're going back to Jerusalem and we're going to serve the King over kings of kings, right? As Hebrews, redeemed from our exile. You know, so there's two ways that are called, and we'll look at both. But basically what happens is, if you just go down, I'm not going to read it all, but basically then the work of the house of the God, which was in Jerusalem, was stopped, and it was suspended until the second year of the reign of Darius, the king of Persia. And then what happened was some of the prophets, Zechariah and Haggai, I think it was, prophesied, and then they started rebuilding. And then when they were questioned by these same people, like, why are you rebuilding, kind of thing, they said, all right, have you got proof to who gave you permission to build? And then they had to go get the documents from, I think it was King Cyrus in Persia, that they had got the permission to build from him, and so that then it was allowed to be built, etc., etc. It's quite interesting though, this use of the word from the other side of the river, when we know that to be a Hebrew you have to cross the river, you have to get over the river Euphrates, and all these places to which we've been exiled. Sometimes we've got to get to from that place of exile, whether it's Edomite exile, or Erev Rav exile, or Yishmaelite exile, or Pharaonic exile, it doesn't matter. We've got to get to the other side. We've got to get to that place where we're free of our slave mentalities, that we've just the simple consequence of being in exile, that the simple consequence of us being in a state where we have been born into a system of governance that is nothing but falsehood and lies. You know, these people here that subjugate themselves to this particular king and go on and on about, oh, well, you'll not get your taxes from him, this tax, and just a rebellious, sinful city. And these are people that are serving God. You know, that's how they appear. They same people that are the leaders, the governors in this world, they want to subjugate us all, like even the religious leaders, but even the governments and things, they want to subject you to all these rules. You know, have you got permission to build that? And have you got this to do that? They don't submit to the rules themselves. They want you a slave to a slave mentality. They want you to serve a slave that's there instead of a king, with all these preposterous rules and all these taxes, massive tax burdens to bear, and they don't do none of it themselves. It's just total hypocrisy. If you look at the governments and the world leaders and even the religious leaders, it's all say and not do. And there's very few genuine good shepherds. Most of them are evil shepherds. Most of the people within Judaism, the top echelons of power within Judaism, Erev Rav, they are definitely not doing and living the word of YHWH. They are breaking every commandment possible, and so too the head of the Catholic Church. You know, and some of these big up bishops, they're committing more crimes than anybody, and yet they're making you feel inadequate and rebellious because you aren't, you know, giving them deference, you know, paying all your taxes to him and all your tithes to him, and, you know, it goes on, and yet they're doing none of it. And even in the governments, you know, you've got these governments that are creating all these absolutely, you know, laws and regulations and just total slave mentality, and yet none of them government leaders keep any of the laws themselves or break every single one of them and get away with it and are not even hardly brought to account. So that's your slave mentality, and that's what we want to leave, don't we? We want to leave that system that is just based on lies and delusion and slavery in order to free ourselves mentally and psychologically from this whole influence that we've inherited, the lies that we've inherited, and we want to get to that place where we are attached to the name YHWH. We are serving only him and nothing else beside. Let's go back and look at these numbers then, because they really are truly wonderful. Okay. Right, so this is the meaning of the letter that they sent to him. To Artach Shashta, the king. Your servants are the people of the other side of the river. Okay, so we've already gone through that, haven't we? Right, let's look at some of these numbers then. What could this possibly mean, the other side of the river? Right, so there's obviously always a holy and an unholy opposite, isn't there? You know, for everything holy, for being on the opposite side of the river, well, like what they're calling themselves, they're being opposite to Hebrews. We have actually got to be people from the other side of the river, but in a good way, haven't we? We're wanting to get out of slave mentality so that we can serve the true King over kings of kings. It's not that we're opposed to service, it's just that we want to be serving the right one. Okay, so these on the wrong side of the river, the other side of the river, i.e. in Babylon, want you to serve the king and pay all his taxes and do all these, you know, where's the plan, where have you got your permission to build from, and they want to see evidence of it, and things like this, and we're going to cause trouble because we're going to go tell the king all about you for building this because you're nothing but a rebel and you're nothing but sinners, etc, etc. So you're up against it if you really want to serve YHWH. So got to bear in mind, there's always, for everything holy, there's an equal holy opposite. That's so that we can maintain free choice. Okay, so Avar Nahara, that is the spelling it would appear when they are describing themselves. Okay, Avar Nahara comes to 532, 82, ordinarily 614. So that's, what are they actually opposite? Who are they opposing? What are they opposing? Okay, these Babylonians and all the nations and all the peoples and all your servants that willingly serve you that don't, by the way. So what are they actually opposite? Well, for a start off, the ordinal is 82, which is the same ordinal as Moshiach ben David. So they are opposite the final Redeemer. Okay, who's Moshiach ben David. They're opposite the Moshiach himself. Okay, so who are they like then? They are Satan. They're accusers, aren't they? They're going to the king and they're accusing the Jews of being rebels and sinners because they've humbly left this horrific exile that they've suffered in Babylon and repented and gone back, and they want to now serve YHWH. So that's the truth, but you're going to come across a Satan, aren't you? Satan. Okay. He's 2 times 532. 2 times 532. So he is who they are really serving. And who is the holy opposite force to this? Yeshua. Okay, so Yeshua is, obviously, he's Moshiach ben Yosef. Moshiach ben Yosef is opposite Metatron. The whole hidden system of Moshiach ben Yosef that becomes the throne that Moshiach ben David sits on, this whole system that's bringing us to a place of perfection where we can actually receive a revelation of the name YHWH from that place of Atziluth, the upper Garden of Eden. We need to raise that whole messianic system up. We need to raise up the bones of Yosef, the truth od Yosef Chai, and that is the throne upon which King David will sit. And we will then have access to that upper garden, the Garden of Eden, in the world of Atziluth, pure godliness, pure knowledge of the truth of the name YHWH and nothing else beside him. Okay, so Yeshua is obviously Moshiach ben Yosef, so very much connected. They are standing opposite everything holy. But then you've got this look, this 614. So who else are they opposed to? They are opposed to Moshiach ben Yosef because this is Kamati, I will rise. Vilna Gaon said any verb to do with rising is connected to Yosef because he had a dream where he says, my sheaf will rise. Okay, and that's the verb kumati. It's the same as kum. It's the verb to rise up, and that's very much associated with, like I say, Moshiach ben Yosef. Why? Because Yosef had the dream about his sheaves, and he says, my sheaf arose, and all the other sheaves bowed down to my sheaf. Okay, so very interesting gematria. Why? Because this is 614, which is exactly the same. So it's exactly opposite there. They don't want Yosef's sheaf to arise. They do not want this hidden messianic system to arise. Okay, because they want to. They serve Metatron. They're happy in that Metatronic system because they've got power and influence in that system. All the forces of exile do. Why? Because they're evil, and it's only in that system does evil exist. So when you're evil and profiting out of your evil and gaining out of your evil and glorifying yourself, which is evil, and serving yourself for the sake of yourself, which is evil, you exist in that system and you want to continue. Why? Because your ego is getting a big boost out of it, and you haven't got humility to let go of your egoism and your selfish desires in order to serve the true King over King of Kings in humility. Right, so it's your ego that prevents you from doing that. But the whole system, and so they suppress the truth about Yosef being alive. They suppress the messianic system. You know, these forces of the Erev Rav, the forces of the Edomites and the forces of Ishmaelites, they suppress them with lies, because the only way that we can get the hidden system to arise is Od Yosef Chai, is with a truth, not these exilic versions of Moshiach ben Yosef or the exiled version of what Moshiach will be or who Moshiach will be, but the truth as revealed in the mind of God, which is the Torah. What does the Torah reveal to us about Moshiach? And he reveals a lot more to us about that. In the mind of God, there's a lot more revealed than what you get in these exiled religions. These religions controlled by exilic forces at this time. You get a lot more truth when you go to the book of the Torah and see for yourself humbly what is written there. So I will arise, and like I say, Satan and all his minions will try and stop that from happening. But they've got a limited time. Okay? And interestingly, this 64 is Yisrael. And that's one of the big delusions as well. There's a lot of lies regarding the land of Israel, i.e. it's not the whole land of Israel at this time. There's a lot of lies surrounding the whole people of Israel, because what is called the people of Israel, the children of Israel at this time, is mainly the Jews and the Benjamites, and the Levites. But is not the whole of the children of Israel. The whole of the children of Israel include the lost of the house of Israel. Okay, and they will be united under Moshiach ben David. And they are part of the revelation that Od Yosef Chai. And there's a lot of people that don't want that revealing, and namely the Erev Rav. who have at this time some kind of dominion over who is Israel and who gets to live in the land of Israel. But that reign will come to an end. Moshiach ben David. You've got the Moshiach ben David regular, the Moshiach ben David ordinal, and this is when David is fully rectified with an additional yod, so slightly different to this spelling, where that is the normal spelling of David. So many times in Tanakh it's spelled with an additional yod. That comes to 434 regular, 92 ordinary, and then 24 for the actual spelling out of David. Add them up together, come to 550. So I will arise, which is related to Moshiach ben Yosef, and that whole system, the whole messianic system, the throne of David, that David himself will sit on, in ushering the entire messianic kingdom and the entire wonderful 1,000 years of rest from all our toil and labour that we've endured to overcome all these exilic powers and forces, and to heal from all these exilic powers and forces and all the influence that they have on us to keep us away from serving YHWH in truth face to face. Tikkun, repair. So when our repair is complete, which we are very close to this time of repair, because this is exactly what YHWH has been doing through the soul of Moshiach ben Yosef, suffering with his in exile, and through the soul of Moshiach, suffering with his in exile, is to complete a tikkun, a repair of the damage that was caused by Adam and Eve eating the tree of the fruit of the knowledge of good and evil, and subjecting themselves to that Metatronic tree of knowledge consciousness where evil can actually exist. Okay, so they are subject to that, and we are subject to that, to learn how to free ourselves from it, repair from the damage that this has caused, cross that river, back into our Garden of Eden with YHWH as King over Kings of Kings. So that's 550, exactly the same as I will arise, and it's exactly the same as Moshiach ben David, and it's also the same ordinal as Satan. He is opposite Moshiach ben David, is opposite Moshiach ben Yosef, and is opposite the whole repair, and he's for Metatron on this side of the river. Okay, Yisrael, again, we've got another connection. We've just had the connection through the ordinal to I will arise. We've got a connection here to the ordinal, and the regular 605 is exactly the same as Tikkun. We are ultimately repairing the soul to dominate over the body, for the Yisrael to dominate over the nations, for Yaakov to dominate over his brother Esau. Okay, for truth to dominate over lies and delusion and fantasy. Okay, and this is connected to the letter Vav. It's this particular spelling out of the letter Vav. If there's three ways you can fill the letter, that this is a letter Vav filled with a Yod. So that's the letter Vav. That's Vav, the first filling filled with a Yod, and that's Vav, the second filling filled with a Yod. So each of these letters are then filled, the Yod filled and the Vav filled, and then this bit here, the second filling of the letter Vav filled with a Yod, comes to 64, which is exactly the same as Yisrael. Okay, and it's the same as up here, I will arise. And each the Vav represents the truth. And this is the filling, what we would call the filling of Vav at the level of Absolute, which is what we want in the highest level of filling of the letter Vav. That absolute, that pure godliness where there is no clipper, there's no evil influence whatsoever. It's just a face-to-face relationship with the name YHWH and just aware of him and nothing else beside him. But if we add them all up, it comes to 92, which is exactly the same as the ordinal for Moshiach ben David. So when we say Od Yosef Chai is the truth, and the Vav is representing the truth, okay, it's the truth that's given to Yaakov from Eliyahu Hanavi. Talk about this all the time. Why does Vav represent the truth? Well, because the letter Vav is 6, and 6 times 6 is 36, okay? And 36 is the ordinal of Emeth, truth. And plus, we have got to see the glory of YHWH revealed within the entire of creation. Now, creation was created in 6 days, okay? And so that's got to reveal the truth of YHWH. But we're also in this period of repair since Adam's fall, is a 6,000 year time limit on a repair. Okay, so at the end of these 6,000 years, every single part of that should reflect the truth, or should proclaim the truth. In hindsight, once we get to the very end, right now we're still caught up in the system of exile, so we still see the evil and we still see the darkness and stuff, but right at the end it will all be revealed that there is only YHWH, nothing else beside him, and absolutely everything that happened in these entire 6,000 years was part of a wonderful plan, a glorious plan to repair the whole of humanity back up to that level in the higher Garden of Eden. Okay, it's all one glorious plan. So now we've got this different spelling of the other side of the river, in the other side of the river. Okay, so there's a lot to think about. You see what I mean when you start to look? What can it actually tell us? It tells us it's all about attaining that messianic consciousness, isn't it? Where YHWH is king over kings and nothing else beside him. So we've got this in the other side of the river, and this is taken from Ezra 4:16. We've already read this, but let's go read it again. We make known to the king that if this city is built and its walls founded, because of this, you will have no part in the other side of the river. Now, my interpretation of that is because they're talking to him is in like, well, you know, they're not going to pay your taxes. They're not going to pay that meal tax. They're not going to pay tax to king and all the head tax. That you forget about it. This is just a rebellious and sinful nation. Go look in the annals and it'll tell you the truth about what this city is like. So don't let them build the temple, else you're going to be in trouble. So it would appear in this context, and the spelling changes to Ba'avar Nahara with an alif at the end rather than he. Okay, in the other side of the river. So to me, that is, they're talking about the children of Israel have already crossed over, haven't they? They're not going to defer service to you anymore, king, because guess what? They're just serving their king, but they do it in a way like Pharaoh. What if you let them go for all these slaves? And he regretted it, didn't he? Letting them go, chasing after them. You know, what have we done to let our slaves go? You know, let's go get them back. So it's like that kind of mentality, isn't it? You know, once they have got to the other side of the river, you know, you're going to try and cause them trouble even there. And God forbid if they ever manage to build that temple, and you're done for, king. You know, they'll only be serving themselves and won't be giving any tribute to you then. So you can understand these mentalities that we face even now. You know, when you know, it's like it's awful. Like, I experienced this when I was born again. I was born again, and you're in a catch-22 because I had absolutely no idea what had happened to me. I'd just been awoken up because I'd prayed and I'd begged out, cried out to God in my absolute despair, you know, and he answered my prayer as simple as that, and I was literally born again. A massive, powerful spiritual transformation where I was absolutely transformed. It was just like from light to dark, you know, from darkness to light, from death to life. You know, I really just felt I'd just woken up, you know, all that, what's been said in that famous saying, Amazing Grace, you know, I was once was lost but now I'm found, was blind and now I see. It's just life transforming experience, okay? But then you start to try and interpret, well, what has actually gone on? You know, I know it's religious and spiritual, but I've no idea really what is this that's happened to me. I just know that I'm not the same person who I was. And then you start to go, I started to go to the church to interpret this experience, and oh my goodness, it's not long before you're suckered back into that exile, and you sort of like lose connection with that initial illumination that poured into your soul. You sort of know what's happened to me has not happened to these people. It can't have done, because look, they're not even alive with it anymore. It's just like going through a routine, and they just seem to be so miserable, and I'm so thankful. And I noticed the differences straight away, but doesn't take long for that to influence you. And it was the same when I went towards Judaism. You know, there's a similar thing occurred. You know, you get sort of like drawn into the whole exile of the religion, and you experience all the negatives, and it's very unpleasant. So this is what they were facing. They'd managed to get to the other side of that. Remember, they were in the promised land. They were doing the work, and then the attack came. Didn't even from there. The forces are wanting to drag you back into exilic frame. They don't want you to be free. And when I think they can smell your freedom, these people, when you start going to church and towards Judaism, they just don't want to see it at all. They want all that light to be calmed down and dulled, and covered up, and God forbid that you might actually radiate godliness and light in this world, and it would seem that these exilic forces don't want that. Just keep serving the exile, keep serving the negative forces, just keep giving you 10%, and don't say much, and don't question this, and what's with that, leave that alone. And they don't want that light to come alive within you, or they want to drag you down and oppress you and stop, because once you are truly free, you're not going to be serving these people. Plus, you show them up for what they truly are, slaves of a slave. They're not serving YHWH. So there's that to bear in mind, because I can imagine every single person that's listening to this has experienced that as a challenge in your walk of faith. People who want to crush your light. People who want to tear down what you've built in freedom. You've got to the other side. You've built the walls. The walls are even being joined together. Let's just get this. We'll tear it down and destroy this temple, because once it's built, they're never going to serve the slave again. And they can sniff you out. They sniff that freedom out. So that they did with me anyway, and it managed to suck me dry for a long time. But slowly and surely you wiggle dry, you wiggle free, and you start to heal by the grace of God. By the grace of God. I talk about I was well immersed into Edomite mentality. I suffered because I questioned everything. I questioned about Christmas, I suffered. I questioned about eating non-kosher, I suffered. And when I was saying I'm not celebrating Christmas, honestly, I got slaughtered by people who weren't even religious or had any belief whatsoever. I'm not letting my children go to pantomime. Oh no, don't bother sending Christmas presents, don't celebrate that. I'm not putting a Christmas tree up. We were classed as extremists. And really, really, really ridiculed, and keeping Shabbat and forget it. It was just nastiness, and lies, and making out as if you are some freak, and you just basically questioning all the nonsense that doesn't make sense. But then I went to Judaism, and I thought, I'm going towards the truth now, according to the Torah. But it's just exactly the same. And the Erif Rav, the Erif Rav, if you think Christianity and what they can throw at you is difficult, I'll tell you now that with the Erif Rav, you can get out of Christianity on your. I'm saying with your own strength, with your own strength to some. It hurts, it's painful, it's tearful, it's frightening. You really are confused. You can leave Christianity, leaving behind a Rav mentality. You need a divine deliverance, because they are going to tear you to shreds, and the impression that they leave in you, that they are the perfect ones, that they have got it perfectly right, and that's the severity of this, it's the severity and it's the complexity with which this slave rules within Erev Rav. It's much more complex and much more structured. It's a much more complex system of rules that have got you entangled in that slave mentality, and it's very difficult to leave that. It's very difficult to leave behind that. It's just because it's such a complex, sophisticated delusion, and it's very difficult to leave that and say this is not YHWH, because they are the people most convinced that they represent YHWH when they are not. They're representing the slave master the slave who rules. But they have got the best argument to convince you that you are the rebel. You are a sinner for speaking against that system in any way, shape or form. And that's them will, and this is hard to bear, especially when you're on your own. Because there's nobody else noticing. Just wait a minute. This is not YHWH, because this is not the light that first appeared to me at all. This is something else, and I know it's parading around as YHWH, and I know it's managed to convince a whole lot of people that are very, very good, and I know some really, really wonderful, truly wonderful people that are subjugated to these forces, these Erev forces, and I know it's very ancient and complex set of rules that you're all obeying, but it's not YHWH, and unless you wake up, you'll be forever serving a slave who rules. But it's hard to get to that state. You can't get to that state on your own. It is a tough fight. You've got to lose yourself. You've got to just be truthful. You've got to be bold enough to say that is not YHWH. It is not how he works. It's something else. It's something else. And I remember, I talked about it before, I was so beaten up by going towards Judaism. 7 years, going to synagogue every day, going to Israel 20 times, learning Hebrew, keeping kosher, children to Jewish school, everything, you name it. It's thousands of pounds spent trying to convert to become Jewish. I mean, one way or another. Just the whole lifestyle is very expensive to live as an Orthodox Jew in an Orthodox Jewish community. Okay, so what happened then? One day I just realised I'm going to Beth Din and seeing these wicked men. That's what the one that not all of them, by the way, but this particular one. And I'm glad I went, and I am glad I had this man, because it caused me to wake up. I was just getting sucked into all them rules and regulations and do's and don'ts, and this whole we are special people and blah blah blah, and everybody else is evil compared to us who were truly holy, and we are the only ones making any difference in this world. And it's a very complex, arrogant system. But anyway, I was going along with it for long enough. But then I confronted this particular dayanim, which means a judge, the people that are to judge whether you're worthy to become Jews. And there was just something not adding up about this guy at all. I'm not going to go into details, but just my soul sensed something, and even though I was willing to subject myself to that, there was a part of me that deep down must have been some resistance. I just wanted to become Jewish, and I wanted to go live in Israel, and I really felt that was the way to go. But there was something within myself that knew that this is not somebody you bend your knee to. You don't submit your tit to this, and this is not really YHWH. This man is not YHWH. He's not his representative on his earth. He's not his judge. There was something in me that knew it was the truth, but you just have to go along with it, because you for want of an alternative. But I remember going on this holiday after this experience, and I was just in this field walking around, right, and it was at the top of a sea, at the cliff, and I was very, 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 very alone. I had no friends at all within that I could speak to about these concerns that I had. I just had a lot of darkness that I'd been feeling for a long time, the exposure to going to synagogue and the whole politics of the synagogue and the whole politics of the Jewish community. There's some really not nice stuff that you've got to end just from a position of a convert. You just might as well. The whole of it stinks. It's really bad. And so anyway, I was walking around this field, and I just came aware, and I was saying to myself, I had all this what I could perceive as in just the way that I was able to perceive that this dayanim that's in front of me, this it's called a Beth Din, house of judgment, and you've got to go see the dayanim that judge you as worthy to be accepted as Jews. It's all strange. It's really weird stuff. But anyway, so I was able to perceive this thing that was before me, that this man epitomised. It was some sort of evil. And I just had it in my mind that you are not YHWH. You are not. You don't represent the truth. This is not him. And I had absolutely no comprehension whatsoever what YHWH was to me at that time in my life. All I knew is all this that was before me, all this, my going towards Orthodox Judaism and everything that within the community and the prayer service and everything like that. There was something within my soul that knew that that is not YHWH, and this is not serving YHWH. You see, you that YHWH himself has put in front of me. I finally figured it out, because I've gone along with a lot of rubbish up until then, and I'd put up with every single disgusting humility and embarrassment and shame of being a convert, going into a Jewish community and being treated a certain way. I'd put up with that for a lot of years up to this point. But at that point where I was humiliated to the degree that I was humiliated by this particular Dayanim, that was the straw that broke the camel's back. So I'm walking around this field and I'm saying, you are not YHWH, you do not represent him. And I was thinking, I have absolutely nowhere, nothing to cling to. I have absolutely no substitute. There's nothing to replace this. This is all I know up until this point, and I am totally and utterly on my own. All my friends, well, you can't see what I'm seeing, but I know this is not YHWH. I know this is not him in truth. These people that are supposedly representing him are not representing him. This is just a big lie. This is just a big hoax. There is absolutely no truth in it. And I'm marching around this field. As I'm marching around this field, right, this one word came to me, Metatron. And I was thinking, you must be Metatron. And I had absolutely no knowledge of what Metatron is. I don't even know where I'd got it from. I must have heard it from somewhere. I'd read a lot of Jewish stuff and even Kabbalistic stuff by this time, but I couldn't have told you what Metatron was. And that word, the Prince of the World, that was what was coming into me. But by this time, I totally denied Christianity. So I wasn't like thinking to myself in terms of what was written in the New Testament, because at this time I totally and utterly denied. I honestly couldn't even bear to read the New Testament. I thought believing in Yeshua at that point, you was as far gone as in fantasy, la la land as anybody. So there's nowhere else I could run, but they were the two words that were in my mind, this Metatron and the Prince of the World. And I remember thinking, I am not going to serve you. You are not. Whatever it was that was stuck under my nose through this Dayanim, and trying to enforce their version of YHWH onto you, which is not the truth. He's not the truth. He's a slave who rules, and that's it. And they have got so accustomed to serving this slave who rules that is who they think that YHWH is. And I'm sorry that they've all been deceived. But this is exile, and we've got to break out of exile. And I can pretty much guarantee that if you were to go to the vast majority of Jewish people, they are 100% serving a slave who rules. It's not YHWH who they serve at all. But it took me a long time to figure that one out, and it took me to have it stuffed under my nose. And the embarrassment and shame that this system brought on you for being a convert, which you should have been shown kindness and love to, if it was to do with Torah and if it to do with YHWH, it would have been treated a lot different. That's how sometimes you know that this is not YHWH who's in charge. Here, you can make up whatever rules you want regarding converts, but you're not keeping the Torah by treating anybody like this. Fact. And it was just that battle, and I can remember I wasn't even aware what was going on, but I knew that I had to fight against this force, and something within me was wanting to fight against it all. I had absolutely nowhere to go. Spiritually. Well, where do you go from now? I couldn't even remember what do you want me? Where do I go now? Do you want me to start turning up to a mosque or something? I were really quite disillusioned at this point, and I just bar it. I just thought to myself, just leave it. And I went through a horrific confusion, because I couldn't. You can't just leave. Where do you go? If this isn't it, then what is? Because I had no answers, so it's just I was totally in limbo, like a state of complete and total limbo. When I finally turned my back on that system, when I finally said, no, this is not me, and then when I started to come back I started to learn about Yeshua from an Orthodox Jewish man's point of view, and it took me a long time, about 4 years of truly examining and scrutinizing, because I didn't want to accept that it was the Moshiach. I couldn't accept that it was the Moshiach, because I'd been in Christianity and learned, this is just not the truth, this is whole rubbish. And I just didn't have the knowledge to understand why it was that I was feeling and why it was I was fighting against, or where in the world do I go with this. And I just had to learn. And it took me a long time to learn all the ins and outs, all the concept of God, YHWH adding in holiness. And it ultimately took a revelation and an emanation of his name shining into my life for me to realise, this thing that I was saying is not YHWH. Absolutely, I was right. When you get the real deal, shine in your light, like from that realm of absolute. And it was a literal emanation. I was sleeping on one Shabbat a couple of years ago, just over 2 years ago now, probably nearly 3 years ago, and all of a sudden I'm woken up. I wake up, and I'd had what you call a Shabbat shlof, and I had kept Shabbat for about 15 years on this point, and I'd always wanted to enter into true rest. And I thought to myself, what will it really look like? And the reality of it is, for a woman, you're cooking meals, and you're not cooking on a Shabbat, but you're doing still a lot of running around, all the build up to Shabbat, and then you finally get to rest. But you've still got a lot of things to do, 3 meals and table to lay up, and make sure everything's prepared, and one thing and another. There's still things to do. But I just wanted to enter into a true rest, and I always had kids running around and this, that, and other, and having to teach them Torah, and there was a lot to do, and I always had this vision what a Shabbat should be like, and I just had this vision of this wonderful, perfect rest, just what I would call manuka. I always wanted to have this manuka, this spirit, deep, true spiritual rest. Anyway, this particular Shabbat, I fell asleep and I woke up, and my soul must have been elevated up into a very, very, very high place. But when I actually woke up, I was still connected to that place, and I'd painted this picture. It was a big picture of the name YHWH according to this, how it's written in the Torah. I'd been learning Jewish meditation, and this was one of the techniques. You had to visualize it. You were supposed to visualize it, but I couldn't visualize it. I have to have the thing in front of me, I need to see it in order to visualize it. I can't sometimes do it in my imagination. I've got to actually see the thing in front of me. So I painted it. I painted this big picture, and I woke up, and literally this profound emanation of light was coming toward me from this painting that I'd painted, and it was just this wonderful, glorious light, and I was just gazing at it, and just so, it was just this love and this trust and this wholeness. And I remember feeling for the first time in my life ever this feeling of what's called bitachon. It was greater than faith. It was a bitachon, absolute confidence and security and trust in this name YHWH. This light that was shining at me, it was the real deal. It was none of these jokers. It was none of these slave masters. It was none of these slaves of slaves version of YHWH. It was the real deal. My entire being was saturated with bitachon to the depth of my being, and just a feeling of just complete and total security, like there is YHWH and nothing else beside him. And then obviously that emanation passed. It passed because in my mind I was thinking, gosh, it's going to get sunset soon, I've got to get to do my mincha prayers. I was still caught up in part of that cycle of do's and don'ts and stuff like that. And that's really what broke I was sat there with this light emanating into my soul, but I was sat there long enough, and I'd received enough. I could never ever forget. My life was never ever going to be the same after that moment. I finally knew who YHWH was. I finally knew who I had to serve in my life. My eyes, and I'd finally received a revelation in truth of who it was, but it was a very slow process, because obviously I'd received this revelation, and I was so filled with joy about it. But obviously, when you've been so battered in exile, you can't just adjust everything in your life, all your thought patterns that don't conform to that reality. You're still trapped by exile. You're still worried what your mother might think or neighbours think, or you still got anxiety about stuff. When that light, the gaze stops, you go back to your normal levels of life. You've still got all the normal things, but then this light is within you, fighting to overcome it, and fighting to, break you free from every single exilic thought, every single exilic word, every single exilic habit that you've formed. And that light is slowly now making an impression in my life, and it's transforming the way I think, it's transforming the way I speak, it's transforming the way I do. But it hasn't been like it hasn't been with a click of a finger. It's a very slow, natural. And I remember after this experience going for a mikvah, and I was saying, I am so happy that you have shone your face, and now I know you are the King of Kings. And I was so happy. I said, but I am so weak, I am so broken, and I said, I can only accept this light very, very, very slowly and holistically. And I remember going and having a mikvah, and I was like saying, in a very natural way, in a very holistic way. I don't want to go crazy, and I don't want to be overwhelmed. I just want it to be all very gentle and natural and holistic. And I remember thinking like that, because I thought, wow, this could blow your mind if you weren't careful. And I think of the last thing that I need in my life after battling all these exilic forces and being broken to absolutely nothing in this walk of faith. The last thing I need is big fireworks to be happening, and to blow a fuse, and so that's how it happened. And slowly but surely, one footstep at a time, that light is becoming more revealed in my life, and I'm conforming to it more. But it happens at a very slow process. So I feel like I've got something to teach, because I've been through it all. These exilic forces are extremely powerful, and it's sometimes very difficult to recognise them. They have a massive grip in this entire world, okay? But people are waking up, and the YHWH is revealing himself to those who truly want to serve him, to his Hebrews that he wants on the other side of the river. And there'll come a time where these exilic forces can't touch us at all, because we have got the authority to leave when we wanted to. When our time of exile is up, it's up, and there's no force of exile that will be able to hold us back. Right, so in the other side of the river, 530. So I think this is referring to those who've made it across, who've got across the Metatronic river, this slave mentality, and somehow by the absolute grace of God, they have managed to enter into a revelation, a very high level revelation of the truth of the name YHWH. Okay. And like myself, I'm speaking about it. I'm not speaking about things I don't know. I'm speaking about things I've actually life transforming experiences I have experienced that has given me the confidence to know the difference between the king and a slave. And like I say, you can't shift mentalities overnight. We are so accustomed to the authority of those powers that we've been subject to all our lives. It's very difficult to suddenly drop everything and just focus on the name YHWH. That transition is quite slow, but we're at the other side of the river and we're making progress. Slow as it is, we will complete that progress. Well, YHWH will complete that progress within us. We are his co-workers. We're not wanting to hinder him now, wanting to get this. We're wanting to get everything built. So 530, 80, and 610. Let's have a look at what this is then. Right, so you've got this brilliant concept. All right, just let's go back up from there. So YHWH, which is the luminary that is related to Moshiach ben David, it comes to, I don't think I've pulled all the numbers through, have I? Just wait a minute. No, just let me go change that. Okay, so Chodesh, which is the new month, comes to 312, 33 ordinary. Together they come to 345, which is Moshiach. Okay, but we know the moon is related to King David. And, the new moon, the renewal of the moon, is related to the reappearance of the Davidic dynasty. Okay, 300, and that's the square ordinal of it. So each of the letters squared according to the ordinal comes to 521. If we add that to the regular and ordinal, it comes to 886. However, this is another spelling of moon, isn't it? This is the actual name for the moon, not just the new moon, but YHWH is the name for the moon, other than new moons really. And that comes to 218 plus 38, with which together they come to 256. Okay, which is a very significant number. So is that a very significant number? We haven't got time to go through that today. If we add the regular, the ordinal, and the square ordinal, it comes to 820, which is 10 times Moshiach ben David, which we've got a connection to up there, haven't we, on the other side of the river. Okay. However, if we add the name for the moon with the name for the new month, which is also the name for the moon, the new moon, if we add those two together, they come to 530, which is exactly the same as the other side of the river. And that is very much connected to Moshe and Moshiach ben David, which is Messianic consciousness. Okay, 53 is the ordinal for Yaakov, spelt with the additional Vav, and that represents Yaakov being told the truth. Od Yosef Chai, Yosef is still alive. And he's told the truth by Eliyahu Hanavi, because 5 times in Tanakh, Eliyahu Hanavi has a missing letter Vav, and 5 times in Tanakh, Yaakov has an additional letter Vav. Okay, and it's also, 53 is also the ordinal of Yeshua. So Yeshua, spelt Yod Shin Vav Ayin, as an ordinal of 53. So that's linked to Yeshua, Moshe, Moshiach ben Yosef. And then we know it's linked to Moshiach ben Yosef because Techath Beno, that's spelt slightly wrong there. Just wait a minute, let me change it. Okay, so Techath Beno instead of his son, this was the ram instead of his son, Abraham's son, Yitzchak. So that comes to 866. So we can see the connection between these, the new month, and what I've just been talking in this whole concept of Moshiach ben Yosef, suffering in exile with us. And that's the system we've got to raise up, all that's been accomplished through him. And this is Tishma'un, as in listen to him, the prophet like Moses, or the prophet like me. That's how it's written. That comes to 866. 93 is the Mispah Gadol of Moshiach ben David. Okay, so when Moshiach ben David here, the nun is classed as a Mispah Gadol because it's a nun Sophite. That means instead of it being 14, it's 25, so that would take it up to 93. And it's also Moshiach HaMelech, the King Mashiach, or no, just what is it? Is it Melech HaMoshiach, the King Mashiach? That's also 93. Together they come to 959. This 530. He sets an end, Kate's Shem, which we know, what does he set an end to? Darkness. The darkness, where do we get the darkness from? We get the darkness from Yitzchak. Yitzchak is representing Gevurah, the Sephiroth of Gevurah, and in that is harsh judgment. There's lots of positives about Yitzchak. There's an element to him that actually did need to be sacrificed. The judgments, the harsh judgments and the severity, and we often find that within religious people, especially as exilic religious people, they're just full of condemnation and hate towards others, and this darkness has got to be brought to an end to, and Moshiach ben Yosef will bring an end to all darkness and all evil. Okay, he sets an end to darkness. And then we've got the sign of the Moshiach ben Yosef, Yonah, Jonah the dove. Okay, and that comes to 601, which is a tipping point of truth. I've gone on that a lot. If you look for my videos with 601 in, you'll find that. And then etrog. So this is one of the fruits of the lulav, isn't it, that you shake at Sukkoth. This is the you know, the fruit that represents the tzaddikim, basically, the most righteous of Israel. So 610, they're the ones that get to the other side of the river, aren't they? The ones that smell nice and taste nice. You know, there's 4 species in total that you wave in the lulav. There's the date palm branch, the brook willow, there's the hadass, and that smells nice, and then there's the etrog that both smells nice and tastes nice. Okay, 52 ordinally, which is 2 times the holy name YHWH. It's also the ordinal for Moshiach, and the ordinal for Ben, son, and the ordinal for Eliah, and the regular gematria for Eliyahu, as in Elijah the prophet. Together they come to 662, which is 2 times 331, 2 times Ephraim, meaning fruitful. His name actually means fruitful, but you know, you'll see soon that is very much connected. The lost tribes of Israel, represented by the tribes of Ephraim, are on the wrong side of a river. We need to get over that river as well. We need to cross that river from exile into redemption. We are in a very deep exile. You know, we are trapped by the forces of exile to a very great degree. And what we're learning from within exile, you know, like the concept of Moshiach ben Yosef exiled within Christianity, is not empowering us with enough truth to overwhelm those exilic forces. So, but you know, a lot of the truth of our experience in exile is to be found in Judaism, but Judaism is not applying that truth to our experience as the lost house of Israel. So there's you've got to go into Christianity and get the light out that's trapped in there, and then go into Judaism and get the light out that's trapped into there, and somehow put it together, and then you've got enough truth from that in order to get out of these exilic states of mind and these exilic forces and powers that be at this time. The heads of the Klippot, the Erev Rav, the Edomites, the Ishmaelites. You've got to be armed against that. The only thing that we can arm us against that, so we're not serving it, is the truth. Okay, that's the ultimate thing that we are finding in this exile. We are finding the lost house, the lost holy sparks of truth. And this is a very interesting concept, because this is Sambatyon. It says, according to rabbinic literature, the Sambatyon, Hebrew, Sambatyon, is the river beyond which the 10 lost tribes of Israel were exiled by the Assyrian king Shalmaneser. Okay, that's from Wikipedia. So there's all kinds of what you would call hidden coded messages regarding this particular river. But can you understand there's a connection from this Sambatyon river? And we're going to see this the Sambatyon river is Metatron. 100%. The Sambatyon river is Metatron. It's that whole exilic mindset with which we are trapped and unable to access divine reality and divine consciousness and true consciousness of the name YHWH, because we haven't been able to get out the truth from this exilic experience enough to be able to transverse that river. Okay, but we're getting close. Okay, so Sambatyon. I'm going to point out these 2 key numbers. Why? Because it links up to here, look, in the other side of the river. Okay, so we're talking about the Bnei Yisrael that managed to get over the Euphrates to the other side of the river. Lo and behold, exactly the same gematria as the Mispar Gadol, the ordinal of the Mispar Gadol. So we know we're talking one of the same things. We've got to get beyond this river, beyond these forces of exile that hold us back, you know, the Babylonian mentality. And here it's the Edomite mentality predominantly, isn't it? But like I say, where do you get the truth when the truth that you need to get over that river is hidden in Judaism and the truth is hidden in Islam, you know, and crashing heads against these exilic forces is very painful, let me tell you. Of experience of it. So this is a very significant number. However, let's go and have a look. We're going to look at something else first, aren't we? Let me just have a look what numbers we're dealing with now. Just wait a minute. Okay, right, we're going to have a look at this number. I've just rearranged it a little bit. So we've got the Garden of Eden, and we talked about the river coming out of the Garden of Eden, didn't we? So you've got this direct link to this whole concept of Metatron from this Sambatyon river, because its gematria is exactly the same as Gan Eden. So we need to cross over this river to get back to our status in the upper Garden of Eden, Gan Eden. So I hope you can understand it's all this wonderful same concept. We've simply got to fight against the powers of these external forces. And what else is to fight against the forces? The truth. Okay? Od Yosef Chai. And like I say, it's not easy to get a hold of that truth in this current exile. Yerushalayim, so they crossed, these that were over the other side of the river, and we're on this one now, are they? In the other side of the river. So we're talking about Bnei Yisrael crossed the Euphrates River to get to the other side, the place of redemption. They were still pursued by the forces of exile. They weren't completely out of the water, so to speak, were they? They're not completely established, and I already explained that to you. It can be quite... leaving exile behind, you've got that period of adjustment. It's like the children of Israel from Egypt. They couldn't quite cross over into the promised land immediately. They couldn't quite cross over the river Yarden to the other side. Could they had to go through the whole desert experience? So sometimes you're in an in-between stage where these forces can still come after you, and you've still got to battle against them. I still do now. I'm not 100%, and I've had this wonderful revelation that I'm going towards, but it takes you a while, like, to build up that temple, doesn't it? They were, they had to halt some of it in order to deal with those exilic forces, and then they moved on once they had the spirit of prophecy come from Zechariah. So you just got to be patient. Going from a place of exile to redemption, it's not just one. You cross over the river, you get over the you awaken up to true consciousness, but from then on in, you've still got a temple to build, and you've still got forces that come against you. But we're in the right place, aren't we? City of Jerusalem. So we can see how that's connected. That's connected right back up to here, though. There's probably another connection. I don't know why I haven't coloured it in sufficiently enough, but I think there was another connection as well to that. But where were they building the temple? It was very clear from Ezra that it was in Jerusalem. This is the city where YHWH desires and chooses to set his name. YHWH fills the entire world with his glory. Okay, that's just by his nature, but the place where he chooses and desires to be is Jerusalem. So of all the places in the world where he chooses to be, it's Jerusalem, and that's why Jerusalem is special. Okay, so obviously there's a big connection to getting to the other side of the river and Jerusalem. And then I did a whole series on this, who in the heavens is equal, because he's got the initial letters Moshiach ben Yosef. And it's pointing us very clearly, it's Moshiach ben Yosef who's equal in heavens. And Metatron has got a status, a very high status in heaven. So you've got to understand that we really want to have consciousness of Moshiach ben Yosef as opposed to this force that's in place, this exilic force, this slave who rules instead of the king. We are one in Moshiach ben Yosef, the throne of Moshiach ben David and Moshe, all united together to reveal the glory of YHWH and nothing else beside him. And I'm not going to go and analyse the numbers now because they're very significant, and I did it in this particular teaching, which is called Who in the Heavens is Equal. But we can see that is equal to Jerusalem. Okay, 1,240 is equal up there. So that's something else, isn't it? Like I said, I'm pretty sure I've got another connection to those that we were looking at, but sufficient to just say Jerusalem. That's where we're heading. We're crossing the river so that we can serve YHWH in the place where he chooses to dwell. Wherever he is, that's where we choose to be also. Okay. You see this number here? I'm just going to bring up a slide. I just just to show you the forces of exile that are reposing the holiness. You see this number here, the other side of the river, and you've got Satan. So you've got 1009 plus 55, and even 55 is linked to all this, opposing all this repair, opposing the true authority of Moshiach ben Yosef, Moshiach ben David. So Satan is against everything holy. I'm just going to flick through this because it'll just show you exactly the power that he's got and how you've got to break these forces of the accuser. And the best way to do that is with the power of the advocate. This one, i.e. the deceased Joseph, fulfilled all that is written in this. Therefore it is fitting that the two arcs should lie side by side. That's from Sota 13b. I recently did a teaching on this, and it's about the coffin of Yosef. You'll see any of those teachings with the coffin of Yosef, and I think it goes through this particular slide, so I'm going to go through it quickly. So this one, i.e. Yosef, fulfilled all that is written in this. It was talking about why are the two arks in the wilderness together. So there's the Ark of the Covenant, and then what's called the Ark that carries Joseph's bones. Okay, so they were side by side, and the sea split because it saw the Ark of Yosef. Okay, so there's lots of coded message in that, but the 1009, it's the same as Satan comes up. Okay, buried in Shechem, so Yosef was buried in Shechem. Satan opposes Yosef. Moshiach spelled in full, that's the regular and the ordinal, 1009. Okay, torn. So Yosef was Trof Yosef, he was completely torn, but this is also referring to the bird of redemption, the dove that tore the olive leaf off, and no more, she was off, she was gone. So we can see from here 1009 and 55, that's exactly the same as Satan lot. So we've got Satan there, who was opposite Yeshua, Mashiach ben Yosef, in every way possible. And all the house of Israel, this is talking about the stick of Yosef. So Satan is against the stick of Yosef in every way possible. The wisdom of truth. Okay, so according to Sota, Chochmat, truth is what is missing. Okay, the wisdom of the scribes shall stink and truth shall be missing. That's what's written in Sota 49. So we really want in the wisdom of truth to be established, but Satan is opposed to that. Anything to do with truth, Satan's territory is lies. Whenever the ark set out, Moshe would say, arise. So this is the holy ark, and from here we've got this highlighted. He spells the word kuma, which is arise, which I've already said is associated with Moshiach ben Yosef, because Vilna Gaon said that everything to do with the rising, because he prophesied, he saw in his dreams, my sheaf arose. Okay, and all the others bowed down to it. So arise is the initial letters, and also you can rearrange them to spell mikvah, which is the holy immersion. We cleanse ourselves from all the filth of exile and overcome the doubt. Sit in the dust, so we are to sit in the dust of our rabbis and learn the truth. This is very difficult at this time because a lot of those rabbis are actually corrupted by Erev Rav indoctrination, but we should be able to. Not one of them is missing. This is talking about, this is taken from the book in... he's taken from the book where it says, seek out the book of YHWH. Not one of them is missing. Okay. 1009 again. And that seek out the book of YHWH, it tells you in the Zohar that if you want to understand the exile and everything about it, then go look at that particular verse. Okay, and I've analysed that verse. I've not put it to video yet, but this is the spider. Okay, so the spider that grasps with her hands and is in the king's palaces. Okay, so you've got to understand that same word for grasps that the spider does. This is code name for Sarach Bat Asher, by the way. because the second filling out of Srach Bat Asher comes to the verse total in Proverbs, which talks about these little creatures, but they're very significant. It's all coded messages, by the way. But the spider that grasps with her hands, she's in the king's palaces. It's code name for Srach Bat Asher, and she's the woman who found the bones of Yosef. When you analyse the verse, it's very, very clear that's exactly what it is. She grabs hold of the bones of Yosef. Okay, this is the difference. Potiphar, for the sake of the bringing glory for the name YHWH, right? Potiphar grabbed hold of Yosef so she could be seduced by him, right? And she ended up. That's why he ended up suffering in prison, because of her. He was accused of the things that she herself had done. The Sanhedrin at the time of Yeshua grabbed a hold of him. They grabbed a hold of him and dragged him down into this exile. Erased his name and did everything they can. They accused him of the things that they themselves were guilty of. So just as Yosef had to go down and be exiled, and suffer, but even whilst he was in the prison suffering, he was still accomplishing great things, weren't he? And there was still a lot of divine providence. But ultimately he was correcting faith. So Moshiach ben Yosef suffering in exile with us is correcting our faith in YHWH to bring us to a place of complete faith. So the Sanhedrin grabbed a hold of Yeshua and dragged him down into this exile too. Just as Yosef was sold into slavery by his brothers, so too Yeshua was sold, weren't he? He was betrayed. So there's a lot of things there. And, just as Yosef was 2 years in prison after he'd spoken to cupbearer, take me out of here, remember me and take me out of here, and he showed a lack of faith, didn't he? He showed a lack of faith in YHWH. He was relying on Pharaoh and the cupbearer to deliver him. They were never going to deliver him, by the way. YHWH was going to deliver him, and when he got to an understanding of that, 2 years it took him for saying those two words. So Moshiach ben Yosef is in suffering for 2,000 years, and we're in 1988 as of Pesach 2001. So we're nearer to Pesach 2002. We're January 2022 now. So only a few months off being 1,989 years. Potentially, according to Sir Isaac Newton, we could be in the year, he could have died in the year AD 30, which would make us closer to the year 1992, 1992nd year of his exile. So we're very close, and we are told, in its time I will hasten it, and in its time is code name for the truth. If you look at the gematria of in its time, it's connected to a revelation of the truth. So the truth is basically what can hasten redemption. So we've got a maximum of a maximum of 11 and a half years left, just less than 11 and a half years left. If, according to the Torah, Yosef was rushed to the pit, but it said after 2 full years, he was rushed out of the pit. And so too Moshiach ben Yosef, but we're getting very close to that. So Srach Bat Asher is the opposite to Potiphar's wife. The Sanhedrin wanted to seduce Yeshua, to bring him to serve them, to satisfy their lusts and indulgences, because they weren't serving YHWH. They were subject to Erev Rav forces. There was evil, wicked people, and that's why the temple was destroyed on account of them. These were evil, wicked people making evil, wicked judgments, and they was wanting to seduce Yeshua, weren't they? To get him to conform to their schemes, get in bed with their Erev Rav authority and self-glorification, and they were having none of it. He called them out for what they were, so they grabbed hold of him and made sure that he were put out of sight whilst they got on and did their business. But our Father in heaven intervened, didn't he, and brought them to their knees anyway. So but that power is still in force today, and that same power that tries to drag Yeshua down into exile and keep him submerged in the pit is still very in force today, those exilic powers. But Srach Bat Asher, she is the one that grabs him She grabs him in a good way to bring up the bones of Yosef, to help raise up the entire throne of Moshiach ben David, because that's what the bones are symbolising. The bones of Yosef today, and the truth Od Yosef Chai represents the throne upon which King David sits. It's the entire messianic consciousness that helps us to become aware and attached to that name, YHWH, and be serving him and nothing else beside. It's the true tree of life consciousness, isn't it? It's us exalted in Moshiach back to our status in Gan Eden, the Garden of Eden. Okay, so I just thought that's a nice indication. And built up in the days of Yor, 709, that's together with the ordinal, 869. So this little spider is going to getting very busy, because that's what we want it, don't we? We want the fallen booth of David to be restored. And then you've got Yeshu, which is the derogatory way Yeshua is called within Rabbinic Judaism, but it was the will of YHWH to cause the Mashiach to descend, and that's the way that he's descended. If we add that up in the first spelling of Yeshu, 393, it comes to 709. Two great luminaries. So that whole verse there, God made two great luminaries, a great luminous to rule by day and a lesser luminous to rule by night, and the stars. This is talking about the Mashiach ben Yosef, Mashiach ben David. The whole verse total comes to 6,654, which is 6,109. And there's other stuff, I haven't got time to go through that. Also this, they shall neither harm nor destroy on all my holy mountain, for the land shall be full of the knowledge of the Lord as the waters covers the seabed. This is where we wanted to get to. 3,027 is 3 times 109, and then this one. And Abraham took the wood for a burnt offering and placed it on his son Isaac, and he took his fire in his hand and the knife, and they both went together. So that's a total of 4,036, which is 4 times 1,009. Okay, so all wonderful stuff. Now let's get back to this concept of Hebrews. The Lord said to Moshe, so we want to be Hebrews, don't we want to get to the other side of the river. Now I've hopefully explained to you what that entails. Let's go and have a look at some more numbers. Right. Lord God of the Hebrews, we're going to be looking at these two numbers for a start. So let's have a look. Blessed be the name of his glorious kingdom forever and ever. So this is what we say after we said the Shema. Shema Yisrael, Adonai Eloheinu, Adonai Echad. Hear, O Israel, YHWH is our God. YHWH is Echad, one. And that's the state of revelation that we want to get to. We want to get to the place where we're saying, you know, Hashem is one. And that means that he's the only power. You see, all these exilite forces, they are nothing. They absolutely have nothing. So there's a connection there between that, and that's what you utter after you've said Shema Yisrael Adonai Eloheinu Adonai Echad Baruch Shem Kavod Malchuto Le'olam Wa'ed. Blessed be the name of his glorious kingdom forever and ever. Okay, so may it soon be established. So we can see that's exactly the same as the Lord God of the Hebrews. You know, imagine when we're free to actually say that and confirm. This is like a confirmation of the Shema, isn't it? Shema Yisrael, Adonai Eloheinu, Adonai Echad. Right, and that's just the confirmation. And at one point, I can't remember which way around it was, but it was when I think when Yaakov had found out the truth about Yosef, I think he said the Shema or something. I'm just speaking from memory, and it was from a long time ago. There's something along these lines. I think after Yaakov found out that Yosef was still alive, he said the Shema, and I'm pretty sure the brothers of Yosef said Baruch Shem Kavod Malchuto Le'olam Wa'ed, or something like that, or it was the other way around. I can't remember, but there was an interaction between the brothers and Yaakov, or as he is Shema Yisrael, hero Israel, in his capacity as Israel. There's some kind of interaction where one uttered the first part and then the others uttered the second. Sorry, I can't fill out the details. I studied it a long time ago, but I know it's related to that kind of interaction between Israel, the father, Yaakov Israel, and his sons. Okay, so there's a double connection there, because here the ordinal for the regular ordinal and the Mispar Gadol ordinal together come to 251, and the regular ordinal for that comes to 251, so there's a double connection there. I am the Lord your God, there is no other God beside me. Okay, that comes to 264, which is exactly the same as Al-Kiseh Dawid on David's throne, 264. But this here, 2958, is exactly the same as the Mispah Gadol of Baruch Shem Kavod Malchuto Le'alam Wa'ed. So there's a wonderful connection there. We want to get to that place where we are conscious there's only YHWH, nothing else beside. Okay, and that is when King David will finally sit on his throne, which is the concept of Moshiach ben Yosef, who has been doing everything in a hidden way to help us overcome all these powers of evil to the point where we're actually able to subdue all those exilic forces with the truth. I have surely remembered. Okay, I don't quite know where I've got that yet. Maybe. All right, I know where I'm going now. So this is Pokod Pokote. I have surely remembered. I.e., this is what Moshe spoke to the children of Israel. I have surely remembered you. You know, I have surely remembered you. Like God has finally remembered the children of Israel. Okay, so that was what God uttered to the children of Israel in Egypt to let them know He had finally come to redeem them. Pokod Yifkod is what Yosef adjured to the children of Israel when he said, when God will surely remember you to take you out of Egypt, take my bones with you. Okay, so it's a wonderful connection. If we add them both up together, this 890, and look what that equals. So we've got I have surely remembered comes to Shavuot. That number there comes to Shavuot. When King Messiah was born, the ordinal of it comes to 112, which is exactly the same as YHWH Elohim. And you know, like when we looked at those verses at the beginning, where there was the verses, the first 7 times where the name YHWH appeared in the Torah. Okay, so starting at Genesis 2:4, and it was YHWH Elohim, and there was 7 instances of it, and it was only broken up to describe about the river that came out of Eden. Okay, so that name YHWH Elohim comes to 112. Okay, as well, so there's a connection there. If we add those two up together, it comes to 890, which is 10 times 89, 10 times evil inclination. Our ultimate redemption is from our own evil inclination, our own exilic mindset, our own lusts and desires. It's our lies, our vulnerability to lies and delusion. That's what we need to get redeemed from. Surely remember you then. So if we add the 780 from Pokod Pokote and the 378 from what Yosef uttered, Pokod Yifkod, it comes to 1156, and then we add the ordinals up, comes to 202, and if we added them both together, or if we add up the 890 and the 467, it's just exactly the same, it comes to 1358. So Lord God of the Hebrews, He's the one who remembers, and He's the one who takes us out, and He's the one who remembers Yosef. Okay, and brings us to this place. Blessed be the name of His glorious kingdom forever and ever. Okay, we've got Saturn and Jupiter. In English, they've got in English the names of them are related to some kind of god. I don't know much about it, but in Hebrew they're not. Shabbatai is related to the concept of Shabbat, and Tzedek is related to righteousness, and they're also very much related to the concept of Moshiach ben Yosef, who's called the righteous one. Yosef is called the righteous one. Is a Tzedek, and Shabbat is obviously related to Moshiach ben David, because he will usher in the great Shabbat for us. So together they come to 907, but it's this number, isn't it? It's the combined, that's the ordinal, the regular and the ordinal. Okay, if you add them together, they come to 1004, which is 2 times 502, 4 times 251. And it worked so long ago that there was a conjunction where there was the closest that there'd ever been in a very, very, very long time, you know, and it's very significant times. That's letting us know there's going to be unity between the Meshachim. Okay, We've got the signs in heaven. This is where we're going now. This is where it all connects up to the concept of being a Hebrew. So, and a river flowed out of Eden to water the garden. So we've got the 251 there. That's the ordinal. Okay, there's loads of. This is so important. Look, the very first word of Torah is 1,826 is 2 times 913. Okay, 913 is Bereshit. Okay, we know what's and a river flowed out of Eden. It was Metatron. Okay, so Metatron is going to oppose and be opposite all these forces, but he won't last forever. And it's also here. Look, again we get the 251, and from there it separated and became 4 heads. So that's how significant the 251 is, because it's mentioned at the gate, and the river flowed out of Eden. And from there it separated and become 4 heads. What separated and become 4 heads? The river that flowed out of Eden, Metatron. So, like I say, they represent 4 rivers, but it could easily represent 4 exiles, couldn't it? And we need to get across this river and out of exile. We need to get to the other side of the river, be Hebrews, because the YHWH comes for the Hebrews. Lord, God of the Hebrews. And this is the phrase that he speaks to the forces of exile. Come to Pharaoh and speak to him. So said the Lord, God of the Hebrews, send my people so that they may serve me. You know, he's not asking for any other kind of people. He wants the people that want to cross the river of Metatron and get out of slave mentality into messianic mentality. That's who he's coming for. And not everybody wanted to leave. 1/5 left Egypt. 1/5 of the people left Egypt. The rest wanted to stay. They were happy in Egypt. They were happy because they had power in Egypt. There's not everybody's going to want to walk away from Judaism. Not everybody's going to want to walk away from Christianity. Not everybody's going to want to walk away from Islam. Not everybody's going to want to walk away from the exile into which they've been exiled to serve God in truth. They simply won't. The Hebrews will. They can't serve anything else. So we've got to be like a Hebrew, because God is coming for Hebrews. Let my people go. Who? Which people? The Hebrews. The Hebrews. And it's synonymous with the truth. He must increase and I must decrease. So these are the most famous words from John the Baptist, aren't they? 251. Okay. So this is the words that he spoke, and then ultimately he mikved Yeshua, and then the dove, the Yonah, or the Holy Spirit rested upon him, Yonah, like a dove, like Jonah. Okay, so this is a dove of redemption. This is the sign of the Moshiach ben Yosef, and it comes up all the time in my teachings. Seeing that I am of closed lips. Okay, so the Mispah Gadol is 1,757. 1,757 is 7 times 251. So this is Moshe, isn't it? I've closed lips. This is the whole concept of circumcision. He's got uncircumcised lips. When we've got to go through a process of circumcision to be true Hebrews, we've got to circumcise our lips, circumcise our male anatomy for males, and maintain sexual purity if you're a female, and most of us got to circumcise our hearts. We do it below, and YHWH helps us from above. Moshe had to go speak to the children of Israel. YHWH helped him by sending him Aaron. There's 2 layers of circumcision. Below, there's a thick outer aula, and then the thin inner membrane, the pri'ah. Okay, so 6 aspects to aula. Circumcision in total. And then also, this is fascinating, the Mispah Gadol and the ordinal of the Mispah Gadol come to 1,930, which is 3 times. I think it's 5 times 386 it should be. 5 times 386, what's 386? Yeshua. So that's where Moshe is related to Yeshua. He made him a fine woolen coat. So this is the Kataneth Pasim of Yosef, the multicoloured coat, the regular here, and the Mispah Gadol here. Add them together, they come to 3,514, which is 2 times 1,757, and as we can see, that's linked to this. Okay. that's unity between Moshe and Moshiach ben Yosef. And then we've got Abraham here. Blessed be Abraham to the Most High God who possesses heaven and earth. So these are the words of Melchizedek, and I've pointed this out in a number of teachings now. It says that Yeshua, Moshiach ben Yosef, is a priest forever according to the speech of Melchizedek. Okay, so now we're looking at the speech of Melchizedek. What is that telling us? Well, it tells us a lot, but specifically, if we take this here, which is the Mispah Gadol, and add it to the overall Mispah Gadol, so the Mispah Gadol and the ordinal Mispah Gadol, add them together, and then the regular plus the ordinal, add them together, and then add both that number for the Mispah Gadol, the regular and the Mispah Gadol together, here, 4952, and the 1838, we get 6790, which is 5 times 1358. So that connects us up to there. The speech of Melchizedek, which relieves you. The speech of Melchizedek really reveals that Moshiach, about Moshiach ben Yosef being Yeshua, and the unity between Moshe and Yeshua. It's all messianic. And then you've got this, look, the prayers of David, the son of Jesse, are completed. And that is 1358, an ordinal of 179. Okay, 2 times 179 is 358, which is the same as Moshiach. Okay, so we can see that is connected up there. And the name of Asher's daughter was Sarach, so she also figures in this, 1757. She's very important because, like I say, she's the one who tells Yaakov, oh, Yosef is still alive, and she's the one that finds the bones of Moses with bones of Yosef with Moshe. Okay, let's have a look at this final slide. I'm going to go through this quite quickly now. So this is just looking at what numbers. Same verse then, Lord God of the Hebrews, Mispah Gadol, 959 and 1090. So we've got listen to, we've already gone through that, haven't we, Tishmon? It's already come up. The listen to who? Listen to the prophet like Moshe. Who is the prophet like Moshe? It's Moshiach ben Yosef, who is Yeshua. So 959 there. Asaph filled, so Asaph, this is actually a defective filling of Asaph, but anyway, I've used them for all the fillings out, defective, and then when the nun is filled with a vav. Okay, I explained why many times in my teachings. So that is 959. The truth is the only power that can subdue the nations to the holy side. There's purpose in this exile. What is the purpose? To subdue the nations to the side of holy, so that they can become vessels of shalom, which can fill up with the light of the name Yod-He, Vav-He. And this is our evil inclination. We've got to battle against evil inclination so that we feel that we've earned that right to get over that river, back up to Gan Eden and serve nothing but Yod-He, Vav-He, and nothing else beside him. Right, to conceal a matter. Everything we had in Moshiach ben Yosef has been concealed. 871 plus 88 is 959. Okay. Yeshua, 53, plus Yonah, the ordinal of Yonah, comes to 88. That's what's been concealed. The Moshiach ben Yosef and his sign. Nes Gadol Hayasham, a great miracle happened there. If we add the initial letters, which are exactly the same as Moshiach, Nes Gadol Hayasham, okay, we add them together. A great miracle happened there. This is the dreidel at Hanukkah. So you've got a dreidel and it's got 4 letters on it. You spin it and it's like a game that you play at Hanukkah. And Hanukkah was the feast of dedication. It's mentioned in, I think it's John 10. Okay, so the dreidel that you use has got 4 letters on it. If you're outside of Israel, it's got 4 letters inside Israel, but that is changed to a peh. Nes Gadol Haya Po, a great miracle happened here. Okay, so this is in exile. Nes Gadol Haya Sham, a great miracle happened there. 513. If we add it to the initial letters of that's on the actual dreidel, which spell Mashiach, it comes to 871. The concept of Mashiach is hidden. Ephraim lamenting. Okay, so Ephraim is lamenting in this sorry and long exile. Okay, so that's the regular, that's the ordinal, comes to 959. Who reigned in the land of Edom? So these are the kings who reigned in the land of Edom before a king reigned in Israel. Comes to 1090. Again, we have got to subdue the forces of Edom, the Edomite exile, because it's them that's reigning at the time in exile. But it won't be forever. There will be peace between Yaakov and Esau. And I talk about this all the time. There will be peace between body and soul, Israel and the nations. Okay? The male aspect of divinity and the female aspect of divinity. The light and the vessels. It's all one concept. It's all connected up here. It's the Hebrews that bring peace between Israel and the nations. It's the Hebrews, the truth that the Hebrews represent, that bring peace between Esau and Yaakov and Esau. Okay? Yeshu, filled out. So this is Yeshu filled out, a second filling. That also comes to 1090. This is the concept of Moshiach ben Yosef in exile, but you've got to understand this itself has got to be a revelation. Even though it's very hidden, a very hidden concept within the Torah, this concealment here, to conceal a matter that YHWH has concealed, must be revealed. Why? Because this is the throne of David. That's why. It's because it's the throne of David. And this here, it comes to 1316. The most diminished humble will become the greatest. See Vayikra. The word Vayikra is spelt with a small letter Aleph that represents Moses in the Torah. So Vayikra and called to, meaning and YHWH called to Moshe. Okay, so it's diminished, it's spelt little. It's representing Moshe in exile, it's representing Moshiach ben Yosef in exile. They're in a very diminished state. And that the letter Aleph, the word Vayikra has got a gematria 317. Okay, and Aleph, it can either be 1 or 1,000. So obviously in its this little state, diminished state, it's worth 1. But there will come a time where that Aleph becomes 1,000. And in that case, the word Vayikra, that's written with a tiny little Aleph in the Torah, will suddenly become, but represents Moshe and the Moshiach, it will become worth 1,000. And when it does, the word Vayikra will be 1316. So there's a connection to Yeshu in exile and Moshe in exile, but the humblest will become the greatest. Those that have humbled themselves, like Hebrews are humble, they will become greatest. Kedar shall be inhabited with villages. So this is, Kedar is the tribe which Muhammad came from, a Ishmaelite tribe. It will be inhabited with villages. And I've talked about this. Hidden within Islam are the vessels of Shalom. You know, Yehuda has got the light of the name YHWH, exiled in Judaism at this time, which is the name YHWH according to the letter of the law. The Christians have the light of the name YHWH above the letter of the law. The children of the Ishmael, or the Muslims, they have the vessels of Shalom. And they all need to be united. The stick of Judah with the stick of Yosef needs to be united together as one. And that needs to fill the vessels of Shalom. Okay, that represent the nations. The name of YHWH represents the soul. The vessels represent the nations, the body that needs to be filled. Okay, go and assemble the elders of Israel and say to them, the Lord God of your fathers has appeared to me, the God of Abraham, Isaac and Yaakov, saying, I have surely remembered you and what is being done. So that's 959. We've already covered that pakodte, but this is even just another, it's just another connection to it, isn't it? This is all about redemption. We're wanting to get to redemption. Who are going to get redeemed? The Hebrews are going to get redeemed. The ones who can cross the river. And then we've got, may your hand be upon the man of your right hand, upon the Son of Man, whom you strengthen for yourself. Okay, and that Mr. Mispah Gadol is 5 times 959. Okay, and I've put C over Emunah. This number is very significant, because what does this verse mean and how is it connected to all this? We're in a place where we're repairing our Emunah. Okay, so Emunah comes to a square ordinal of 638. Sorry, there's the regular, the ordinal, and the squared ordinal, which is 497. Add them all up together, come to 698. 638. There's 13 principles of Emunah. So we multiply 638 by 13, we get that, which is 22 times 277, which is exactly the same as that verse that we were looking at. This is Amalek filled out, which is the absolute opposite of faith. He's always battling. Oh, just wait a minute, let me go back. He's always battling against Moshiach ben Yosef and the truth. And we've got Samuel, he will be the prophet that anoints the Moshiach that is to come. And 53 is the ordinal of Yaakov when he's got the additional vav, which is the truth, represents the truth, or Yosef Chai, and it is also the ordinal of Yeshua. And together they come to 430. 430 is 10 times 43, when 43 is Ezra. So he will anoint Mashiach ben David just as he anointed him the first time round. Okay, Shmuel will come back just as Mashiach will come back. This is quite interesting. This is this verse down here, and it will be a place beside which fishermen will stand from En-Gedi to En-Aglaim, a place for spreading nets, and there will be there fish, will be many kinds like the fish of the great sea, very many. This is a prophecy according to Jerome that relates to the 153 fishes in the dragnet, which I speak about a lot. So En-Aglaim comes to 377. Okay. Also, what I forgot to point out there, the 283 is it's Yosef filled out to the second filling. 283. That's a filling out of Yosef. Okay, so we know that that's related to Yosef, and this is related to Yosef. Okay, En-Gedi. And En-Gedi is a very famous place for King David. That was where King David hid out. And it's also a very famous place to go get mikved. 204 is 2 times 102 Emunah. So we're in this exile 2,000 years, correcting our two aspects of faith that need correcting, which is our faith in the coming of Moshiach, the Moshiach of YHWH, not our exiled versions, fantasy fiction versions of Moshiach, and in the resurrection of the dead. Okay. And Yosef's connected to both of those. One unties one. This is the Mashiach untying his bandages one by one according to the Talmud, and he unties them one by one so that if as soon as he's called, he can come immediately. He's only untying one bandage at a time. It's all coded message, and I've decoded that in previous teachings. And with that, I will say Shalom. Oops, next lesson.